Talking about Bridgerton while wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants just somehow seems so not right. But I'm cozy. Hi, I'm Jess. From the die-hard dedication to a color palette, to sneaky appearances made by insects, to the mini version of my favorite sculpture, there are just so many cool details and hidden meanings in the set design and costumes of Bridgerton. Bridgerton is Netflix's super popular series produced by Shonda Rhimes that I swore I wouldn't watch or be into, but like 24 hours later and I finished the entire season. I am no Regency expert, which refers to the time period that this show is set in, but I felt like I just needed to make a video and talk about my favorite details and the hidden gems that I found interesting and fun. Like the colors, the designs, the art all help to tell the story. And please do not watch this if you haven't finished the entirety of season 1 because I'm gonna spoil like everything for you. But the good news is, as I have demonstrated, that the show is very bingeable, so I believe in you. Feel free to keep this tab open with my video in it and then you could like return back to it. And yes, I want to point out that I know that the show is based on a series of novels by Julia Quinn, but I am just basing this video off of the Netflix show. Anyway, let us promenade into my video. So, I'm gonna mostly be focusing on the Bridgertons and Featheringtons in this. So what better way to start than jumping into where they live? Because their homes were designed to basically be an extension of who they are, their personalities, their place in Regency London high society in 1813. Or you can refer to it as the ton. They kept saying the ton. I didn't know what they were talking about. I thought they were saying the town, but they really are saying the ton, like T-O-N, and it comes from a French phrase that means like good manners or something. Yeah, so that's what they mean when they say the ton. Okay, back to the homes. The Featheringtons. They represent new money. They're constantly trying to prove themselves. I mean, they kind of have to. And they want to be the center of attention. Like if you look at any part of their home, it is pretty like dramatic. Like even the furniture says a lot about them. Like this curvy, extravagant couch, for example. Make sure they didn't call them couches. This couch bothers me, mostly because there are just like way too many pillows, which represents them really well actually. Like everything is just done in excess. And we have the Bridgertons, who represent old money. They have nothing to prove because they're so well established. I forgot where I read it, but apparently on set they referred to the Bridgerton family as the Tiffany family and the Featherington family as the Versace family. Anyway, the Bridgerton spaces are really light and airy. There's a lot of like balance and symmetry, and clearly since I enjoy finding deep meaning and symbolism in couches, I feel like I need to point out that the Bridgerton couch, on the other hand, is pretty orderly and chill, not too many pillows, and just has that like classic silhouette. So now let's talk about the deliberate use of color. The Bridgertons. It's obvious, they mostly surround themselves with the color blue. From the silk wall panels to the furniture to the flowers, and they're almost always wearing different shades of blue. Their particular color of blue is inspired by Wedgwood blue. Wedgwood is a famous British brand of china and porcelain, and I learned that Wedgwood is particularly famous for blue. Is Wedgwood blue like the millennial pink of the 1800s? The color blue is usually associated with tranquility, royalty, luxury, intelligence. Back in the day, the natural pigments used to create the color blue were very, very expensive. So the color was usually reserved for royalty or like anything religious. Like you couldn't just randomly afford a piece of blue clothing at the time. Yeah, so I think the color blue really embodies the Bridgerton family vibe and their social standing really well. Then the Featheringtons, on the other hand, they usually stick to like really bright yellows or like sometimes greens, but like mostly yellow. Like let's take their grand staircase, for example. I actually really love the look of this. So yellow, it's usually associated with like warmth and optimism and enlightenment. But like some negative connotations of it relate to madness or excess. I think the color yellow fits the Featheringtons really well. There's nothing subtle about them. You can't miss them. Also, I see them kind of going a bit crazy trying to get noticed and better their situation. If the Featheringtons existed now, they would 1000% be all over that neon clothing trend of 2018. I also want to quickly talk about some of my other favorite characters. The Duke of Hastings and Lady Danbury. They tend to wear a lot of rich rubies and golds. And I feel like they dressed Lady Danbury in similar shades to show this connection she has with Simon, because she essentially like raised him and had faith in him when no one else did. Why am I talking so much about clothing colors? I found that depending on the situation and like the trajectory of a particular character, the color they wore said a lot about how they were feeling, or maybe foreshadowed what they were about to go through. Or I'm reading too much into it, but like I feel like it does symbolize something. Hear me out. Like when Penelope and Eloise are like really concerned and confused about how babies are made, they are wearing really light blush pinks, and pink is usually associated with like innocence. And then I noticed Daphne wears black for the first time when she comes clean to her mom about her scheme with the Duke of Hastings. And I saw this as symbolizing her being like not just like an innocent, naive, unknowing girl anymore. She'll also wear darker shades over time as she kind of like comes into her own and is more confident and just like educated about the real world. And even the Duke of Hastings wears more and more colors over time as he opens up. And that's a huge contrast with this scene where he is wearing like all gray and he's super like moody and conflicted because he was going to leave town and he just like ended things with Daphne. And then we have Lady Bridgerton and Lady Danbury. I noticed that they're both wearing the color purple right after Simon and Daph made things official. Like purple is also historically a color associated with royalty. And the internet reminded me that purple is the combination of red and blue. So it's this visual symbol of Daphne and Simon coming together. And those are just a few of the examples. On to the family's different symbols. The Bridgertons are represented by the bee. We see it in the intro, we see it on Benedict's clothing multiple times, like there's a bee here and a bee there, and a bee also here. There's a bee again. Before we even enter into the Bridgerton household, we see a bee on the door knocker. Bees are associated with being productive and industrious and orderly. There's always a queen bee. They know their place in society. And then there's that phrase, the birds and the bees, which is actually a huge theme in the show. So I feel like all of this symbolism around the bee does work for the Bridgerton family, but the main reason there is this bee lurking around is because the father of their family died from a bee sting, apparently in the books. And the Featherington family, they are represented by feathers. No, actually they're not. But speaking of feathers, there is a ton of like feather and birdcage imagery in the show, probably symbolizing the lack of freedom women had and like the mating games and rituals that all of these young people have to go through. The Featherington symbol is the butterfly. There's butterflies all over the banister, in their hair. They're everywhere. So when I think of a butterfly, I kind of think of like a social butterfly. And I see this in the Featheringtons because their best chance of working their way up the social ladder is to marry the right person and to like socialize their way into that. Butterflies also represent transformation and change. The Featheringtons are maybe little caterpillars right now, and they are just working their way into blossoming and growing into their best selves.
Finally, I'm a beautiful butterfly!
And I think the butterfly is particularly a good symbol for Penny. She's like stuck in this pretty toxic family dynamic where she isn't really like listened to or appreciated. But then she has this alter ego, Lady Whistledown. And when she's in that role, she's super empowered to speak her mind, and she basically like controls culture and what society thinks. So I'm hoping in like the next season, she transforms into that version of herself like all the time, and she doesn't have to hide behind being this mysterious Lady Whistledown. Like she can get the recognition and credit she deserves as Penelope. So all of this is taking place during the Regency period, which lasted only 9 years, from 1811 to 1820. But the style and impact that came out of this time period was so iconic that it's actually more of like a Regency era. It's not confined to those 9 years. So Regency, where do we get the name? We get the name from King George IV, and he served as Prince Regent, the temporary king, the like substitute teacher of kings, while King George III, his father, was ill and deemed unfit to rule. But I learned that the Prince Regent was not popular at the time. He was known for his extravagance and partying and messing around with lots of women and spending a ton of money. So he basically had his ministers take care of all the boring, serious political stuff, while he focused his attention on the fun stuff. So he wasn't liked, but he apparently had great style. So this explains the boom in fashion and design that took place during the Regency period. So while Bridgerton takes place during the Regency period, it isn't trying to be like historically accurate. It's more of like a modern, whimsical take on the period. I think the reason the show is so popular right now is because it's so light and fun and fantastical. Like, yes, give me pearls spilling out of my fruit bowls. And this scene, just give me this scene. So while there's a lot of like imaginative parts of the show, I feel like the art and architecture is like pretty spot on. Like during the Regency period, for example, there was an obsession with all things that had to do with ancient Greece and Rome. Like we see it in the fashion. All these pastel, sheer shift dresses that the women wear were modeled after classical Greek drapery to like all the columns. The patterns, like this is a Greek key pattern right here. Even the festoons. I don't know if I'm saying that right. These things. Look at this is from like 40 BC and it's still cute. And even the art that appears in the show has to deal a lot with like Roman and Greek mythology. Okay, this is probably my favorite random thing I found in the show. This tiny ass sculpture is the mini version of one of my favorite sculptures of all time. It's by Antonia Canova. The original one is now at the Louvre and it is of Cupid and Psyche. And I have an entire video talking about this, so you should check that out. Here. And then there's this painting of Danae, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and the Shower of Gold, which is actually at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. So I saw this in person like way back when and then got really excited to see it in this show. But yeah, this is also based on a Greek myth. Like we also have the Greek goddess Athena, who is one of my personal favorites. And she represents like wisdom and like strategy during battle. And so in this scene when Daphne's all like confused and like conflicted and then her mom comes to her and is like, come talk to me anytime and like I'll give you my wisdom. And then Daphne is like, no, you don't give me wisdom. You just like give me all of these like vague metaphors and don't prepare me for life and blah, 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 blah. And then it just like further reinforces that Daphne had to gain in all this wisdom on her own. Fuck, my foot's so asleep. We have the Dying Gaul or like Gladiator, which is based off of like an ancient Roman sculpture that's in the background when Simon is like, love changes nothing, kind of like symbolizing that like he is giving up on like the fight for like love with Daphne. So yeah, all of these things I kind of like rambled on about just shows how much attention to detail went into the creation of these sets and like which artwork was chosen and what colors were chosen, and that there's a lot of hidden meaning in there if you're on the lookout for it. Obviously I didn't cover everything, but like I just wanted to share some stuff that caught my eye. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you really soon. And I mean it this time because I am trying to get better at posting videos. New year, new me. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Bye.